This is a technical check. Checking for audio online. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our public hearing on Monday, March the 3rd. I'm Kevin Murdoch, Mayor of the District of Oak Bay, and I'll be chairing tonight's public hearing for the proposed Heritage Revitalization Agreement HRA 00010, encompassing both 1587 York Place and 1562 Prospect Place. As we start our meeting, we'd just like to acknowledge that we hold these meetings in the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, specifically the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum or Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. Before we begin, just please be advised that these public hearings are being live webcast, and the recording will be archived on the district's website for future viewing. Personal information, including your image and personal opinions, may be collected and disclosed as part of council proceedings on the video. When presenting to council, if you're acting as a representative of a resident of Oak Bay or speaking of another party, please ensure you are not disclosing any personal information about that person for which you do not have consent to do so. Look at that, we're getting our names right. Apparently someone came in and switched these all around. What does mine say? Thanks, Christina. Well, this is public hearings are formal despite that. And so I'm just going to read an overview of the protocols for this evening. Everyone wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. I'm going to ask that speakers limit their initial comments to a maximum of 3 minutes each so that everybody has a chance to an opportunity to speak. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, those wishing to speak again may do so, ideally if you have new points to make. Please keep your comments respectful of council and staff and members of the public. Speaking in public is quite difficult for many people. We just ask that the audience listen respectfully to all opinions without any cheering or booing or anything, so that everyone feels comfortable to share their views here tonight. All comments are to be directed to Mayor and Council and must relate to the proposed bylaws. The purpose of a public hearing is to give Council an opportunity to listen to the views expressed by the public. Public hearings are not an opportunity for the public to learn significant details about the application. The opportunity occurs through previous meetings and presentations and within the staff reports provided to date. For the information of those present tonight, public hearing binders, which contain all written submissions, are available for review if anybody wishes to comment on those submissions. As the chair, I reserve the right to conclude any presentation made by any member of the public, council, or staff that does not relate to the proposed bylaws, is disrespectful towards any other person, or is repetitive of views that the individual speaker has already made known to council. Finally, council members are here to listen to the public's opinion with an open mind. No one has prejudged the outcome of these applications. So an overview of the order of business, so we all can keep track here. It is in the agenda, but the order of business for these public hearings follows a formal 7-step process. The planning staff will introduce the proposed bylaws. Council will formally receive written submissions provided prior to the public hearing. Any late submissions will be read aloud and formally received. The applicant's submission will be formally received. The council will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions of the applicant or staff, and then members of the public will be invited to provide comment on the bylaw. I will call 3 times for comments, so I'll make sure that nobody misses the opportunity to speak in the course of the evening. After that, the public hearing is then recessed or closed as determined by council motion. So with that, we will kick off our public hearing. Again, the public hearing tonight is for Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw 4885, 2025 for 1587 York Place and 1562 Prospect Place. I would now invite planning staff to introduce the purpose of Bylaw 4885. I believe Mr. McStravick. And you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just wait for our staff to get the presentation on the monitors for us. Great. So, as mentioned, the public agreement authorization bylaw number 4885, 2025, and this application was opened on the 1st of May, 2023. These next couple of slides just show us a bit of the site context within the Prospect Heritage Conservation Area. The subject properties are shown outlined in blue and yellow on that image. We have an R2 zoning. And a few words about the historical heritage context. The home located at 1587 York Place is known as the Annandale House. It was built in 1898 and was given a heritage designation by the District of Oak Bay in the 1990s. It is located within the Prospect Heritage Conservation Area, and the condition of the house has deteriorated over the decades. Heritage revitalization agreements are a tool that municipalities may use to grant development rights in exchange for investment into revitalization of heritage properties. And so the purpose of the bylaw being considered at the public hearing tonight is to enable a heritage revitalization agreement between the District of Oak Bay and the owners of 1587 York and 1562 Prospect Place. The HRA will allow additional density by facilitating the creation of 2 additional residential lots, which would be developed with a duplex, including secondary suites, and a single-family dwelling. In exchange, the Annandale House will be extensively revitalized and preserved for the future. It will be converted for use as a residential fourplex, and its position on the lot will be adjusted, including by rotating the house to face towards York Place with the current eastern frontage. Whoops. Skipped ahead a little bit. This slide just shows a few key dates in the history of the application so far, including a couple of visits to the Heritage Commission, and most recently the bylaw was given first and second reading by council on the 10th of February 2025. This slide shows the current site plan, north being to the left. We can see the Annandale House on the bottom left of this image, the existing detached garage on the bottom right. And the next slide shows the proposed site plan. It's a little hard to see, but I will zoom in. On this slide, the proposed new layout for the Annandale lot, we can see that the house has been rotated and converted into 4 units. Skipping ahead, we have a couple photos just showing the current state of the property. For context, looking eastward and looking southeast, existing Gary oak trees in front of the home. And this is an architectural sketch of the revitalized facade, which would be facing towards York Place after the house is rotated, as proposed. And this is the proposed north elevation on the left side of the house, where we can see, for example, a 3-car garage at the basement level at the back of the house, and other steps have been taken to revitalize the house. Proposed lot 2 would include a duplex, as mentioned, with secondary suites on the ground floor. This site shows the space beside Annandale where that duplex would be constructed. This slide shows the existing rock wall in front of proposed lot 2, where a new entrance would be created if authorized by the HRA. And here is the front and rear facade of that proposed duplex. Previous iterations of this proposal had, of course, included a more modern style duplex structure, which was not considered to comply with the HRA Heritage Conservation Area guidelines, and so this proposal has been revised accordingly. Lot 3, as mentioned, will be proposed to contain a single-family house, which is converted from an existing detached garage, which can be seen at the center of this architectural rendering to the right of the proposed duplex. And here's the site plan of proposed lot 3, which will take advantage of an existing entranceway through the rock wall. And a photo of the existing garage building, which is under construction and which would be converted into a single-family home. And lastly, a floor plan showing how that garage could be converted into a single-family home. That concludes my presentation. I will just note as well that, of course, the applicants are here and available for questions from council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McStravick. Prior to the public hearing is attached to agenda item 2.2 be received, moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I should just note that Councillor Smart is unable to join us here this evening, but will be watching the recording of these proceedings to hear the submissions before consideration of the matter later on. We now move to 2.3, which is reading of new submissions. Has the corporate officer received any additional submissions at the public hearing this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. There were no additional items of correspondence received.
Okay, thank you. Then we just move to application presentation. The application, well, in this case, the application submissions included in the agenda for information. Staff have presented the overview of the application. Of course, the council, the public, and the applicant may wish to refer to details of the submission as they're asking questions or answering questions. So really next we have clarifying questions from council to either the applicant or staff. Do members of council have clarifying questions at this time? No? Okay. Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. It actually came about from one of the letters that came in, and it was to do with expanding grout. That could be, wondering if expanding grout could be used to reduce the environmental impact and enhance the quality of life for the neighbors during construction. So I'm just wondering if we can get an answer perhaps from the proponents if they're going to be blasting or using something like an expanding grout. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. It's a little outside of the bounds of the application piece here, but we do have a blasting process coming back. But I at least turn to the applicant to see if that's something they've considered, and if they can answer, I'll certainly allow that.
Thank you, through your worship. We have the whole team here today. My name is Mark Holland. I'm technically the applicant. We have our whole team here today, and it might be appropriate if you're willing to have someone from our team who knows more about blasting than I do to answer that question. Would that be appropriate?
If they're able to answer the question, that would be great. Thank you. And you, Mr. Holland, did a great job of doing the right protocol of giving your name and who you're with and then speaking. So if we could just have everybody do the same.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mike Miller, 1562 Prospect Place.
Welcome.
Through you to Councillor Braithwaite, the exact form of blasting hasn't been determined yet. In fact, we're in the early discussions and phases of discussing the blasting with the municipality and through the planning department, but that is one intervention that can be done. It all depends on the lift. So if it's greater than 4 feet, it must be done under standard charges. Because expanding grout doesn't quite do the trick. However, if it's less than 4 feet, expanding grout can actually work quite well. So it could possibly be a bit of both. But without the benefit of a cross-section or a blasting report in front of me, I would be remiss to give exact information as such. Sorry, I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite? Okay. Don't take the lack of questions as lack of interest. Council had lots of opportunity to ask questions last time, and we're really here to hear what the public has to say. So moving on to section 2.6. The first section is public input. So this is the public input portion of the meeting. Each member of the public will be provided up to 3 minutes to speak. For members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to council, you can raise your hand and I'll call you forward. And those in the side room, you can just poke your head out to the door and wave your hand, and I'll invite you up to speak as well. For any members of the public who are watching online, either on YouTube or on Zoom, who wish to speak to council, I would encourage you to either call the 1855 number and hit *9 to raise your hand, and we can let you into the meeting. And if you're in the Zoom call, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand within the application. Either way, whether you're online or in person, you will have a chance to address council if you wish to do so. The meeting ID, it is in the agenda package, but I'll just read it out here in case you can't see that for some reason. The ID is 856-4956-6097, and the passcode is 604222, and that would get you into the Zoom meeting. It's also, of course, in the agenda package. For all the speakers who come forward, we just ask that your name, or just note that the name and comments may be recorded in the minutes of the public hearing and form part of the permanent public record. And all you have to do is begin your presentation by clearly stating your name and municipality of residence, stating, if you can, stating whether you are in favor or opposed to the proposed bylaw, and then providing your comments. And I'll keep you on track for time. As I said, you will have an opportunity to say all you want to say, but we are just asking that the initial comments be captured to 3 minutes so that we can get through and make sure as many people as possible have a chance to speak. There we go. So hands. Who would like to speak? Please come forward, and then when you come in and just stand. Oh, you can go first since you're thinking. You can come forward and wait for the second time's turn. Please come.
Okay.
You get to set their, yeah, just name, municipality of record, and then off you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Michael Arnasia, and I am a direct Oak Bay resident, and I'm also a neighbor in the community just down the road. This house has been being restored. I personally restored a heritage designated house down the block some time ago, and I've worked with the Heritage Committee on different projects locally as a restorer. I learned the significance about this project from the origin before it was even put together in the way that it is now, and I've kind of watched it over time. I've also been a little bit involved on the blasting end, so when I heard about that, I've even had to talk to neighbors about how to deal with that, and I felt like that was done really well over time. Something like this project, I don't think can be taken lightly because the costs that are being put together to make this all happen is the order of magnitude is so big. And so that's a really big deal for someone to take on. The other thing that's really intriguing about this project in particular is the ability to get small little units that people can afford. And I really favor those little units because there's a lot of students out here and we haven't had basement suites and things available for them. And so now this is an opportunity to get affordable places for those people to live in and single-family dwelling instead of single-family dwellings. So I think it's necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And well under 3 minutes. Thank you so much. The next, there we go. Come forward. Welcome.
Thank you.
Same process, just name, municipality of residence, and.
Well,
and
good
please
evening,
welcome.
council members. My name is Karen Lindsay, and I am in favor of the development proposal. I also live close to the development proposal in Oak Bay, and I also live in an old heritage house, 115 years old, that is in much the same condition structurally that it was in the olden days. Now has heating and insulation and such. I'm in favor of the proposed development because it increases the housing capacity in Oak Bay, which will help the municipality meet the very ambitious targets that have been set by the province. And that if we meet those targets, the municipality will be eligible for funding or other incentives, which will benefit the whole community. So I see that as a real plus. I also think that the development, like the previous speaker, will add diversity to the types of homes that are available in Oak Bay. The side-by-side duplex and the one-bedroom suites are, in my view, an asset to the neighborhood. I, for one, would like to age out in Oak Bay. Don't want to stay in this existing 115-year-old house, but I would like to live in a duplex or a condo. And so there aren't very many of those right now. And so I would like to see over the next 20 years, I'd like to see a little bit more choice. And they're also more affordable. And then this proposal, I understand, includes off-street parking, which is one of the concerns I have with the City of Victoria's proposal that are going ahead. They don't include very much parking. And so then there's a concern about congestion on the street. But I understand that this has one parking spot per one-bedroom unit, 2 parking spots per duplex, and 2 spots per the single-family dwelling, which I think is adequate to ensure that the streets will remain as they are today. And then I am a young person, and I am concerned about climate change and environmental considerations, and I think that topic has also been addressed by this development. I understand that the new buildings will meet, the existing building that's being restored and also the new one will meet step 3 of the code, which I understand used to be called the Green Building Gold Level Standard. So if my house was augmented in that way, I would feel very positive about that. And then restoring the main house and the existing garage rather than knocking them down or allowing them to fall down because they're rotting, keeps the waste of the house out of the landfill. So I'm in
Ms.
favor of
Lindsay,
that.
I'm gonna just ask you to wrap up. So in 3
Yeah,
minutes'
that's
time.
good, because I only have one more point. And then the landscaping of the proposed property will increase the tree canopy coverage. And I don't know if you remember the heat dome that happened a few years ago, but it was very unpleasant. But Oak Bay didn't suffer nearly as much as James Bay. So overall, we're pretty good for keeping the whole community cooler than other places.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. And if you want us to add more points, you're welcome to come back up.
No,
But
that
let's
was
keep-
everything I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a hand online, Mr. Boyle. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Fantastic. My name is Mike Boyle. I'm actually a resident of Victoria, but we operate and own Otavio Bakery in Oak Bay. And so we are in favor of this project for staffing issues. We have a number of our staff that actually are not able to have housing close to their place of work and live in Machosen, Stuk, and areas of Saanich. So, even finishing work at 6 or 7 o'clock makes for a long trip home. So having projects like this that create more single units for our staff are important to keep our business in operations. So we're in big favor of the proponent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle.
Okay.
Boyle, sorry.
Thank you.
Please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening. Same process as everyone else. Just name and municipality, please.
My name is Charmin Minus, and I live within the boundaries of the Prospect H Heritage Conservation Area. I'm not in favor of this proposal, and this is why. And my comments are going to be about the trees and not about the buildings. The proposal to remove many of the mature Gary Oaks on the Annandale property is very worrying. Trying to re-establish a Gary Oak meadow will not be a walk in the park, especially considering the upheaval construction will have on the soil, which will be dug over or perhaps even removed. It's proposed that the existing mature trees, some of them more than 100 years old and providing a very green and eco-sensitive canopy already, will be replaced by small saplings. The success of this new planting cannot be guaranteed, and this is why. And I would like to say, before I say why, is that I've been a gardener for 40 years. I garden at Government House. This is my 13th year at Government House. I've spoken to many experts and done my own research on the difficulty of establishing Gary Oak trees. In fact, it's highly likely that this planting will fail, because the Gary Oak species that is native to this area, Quercus garryana, is notoriously difficult to establish and extremely slow growing. As a seedling, they have just 1 or 2 tap roots and very few fibrous roots for anchorage, so are subject to quick die-off without daily inspection and judicious watering in dry weather. It's recommended to match the soil in which they will be planted for success. Best practices are to transplant seedlings from a nearby area whose soil contains the familiar bacteria, minerals, enzymes, and nutrients that they are used to. Nursery-grown trees, often from Washington, Oregon, will not have this advantage. They may be in an entirely different soil, or they might more likely be in potting soil. Seedling success rates after 3 to 5 years are typically 50%. They need to be protected from rodents and browsing animals until they are of a height that allows a crown of leaves for survival. It's common for seedlings to take 10 years to achieve just over 3 feet. In poor soil and rocky conditions, the tree remains shrub-like all its life. Think of the small Gary Oaks you see at Kettle Point. The destruction of the original century-old trees and replacement with immature ones will not result in the green densification that is one of the hallmarks of Oak Bay. The natural assets of this lot should be preserved as much as possible. The mature landscaping should not be bulldozed away just to facilitate driveways when there are other ways to access the homes. May I remind Mayor and Council that we aren't just talking about a single heritage designated property within any neighborhood. This is no ordinary space. It is the Prospect Heritage Conservation Area, the only HCA in Oak Bay. We must approach decisions in this area with the utmost respect. Please consider voting no on this iteration of the plan for Annandale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Minus. I'm going to just remind anybody in the room to the side here, you can come to the door. Please come forward if you wish to speak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rob Koopmans, and my family and I have lived in Oak Bay for 29 years. Since 2018, we have been direct neighbors of Annandale. During this time, we have watched Annandale deteriorate significantly. Our house is a 1904 Rattenbury McClure heritage home next door to Annandale, and this was also subdivided previously by the previous owners. We really cherish the heritage character of York Place, and for the past 2 years, we have followed the discussions about Annandale closely, keeping an open mind to the many opinions that have been shared. But now we believe it is time for action. Allowing Annandale to continue to decay should not be an option. We greatly appreciate the hard work from Oak Bay staff and council and the mayor throughout this whole process. We also recognize the efforts of Zebra Design and the developer. They have listened to concerns, and Ross Collins has made many requested design changes over the past 2 years. And we really appreciate everyone's dedication to create a workable plan. And I believe this plan is overall beneficial for Oak Bay. A few years ago, I personally visited Annandale during an open house, walking through all the rooms, the hallways, the atrium, the library. And although beautiful, the home requires an immense amount of work. This is not your average family reno. Proper restoration will cost millions, perhaps even $4 million, much more than building a new structure. And therefore, I think we need to be realistic. There are very few people who can or would be willing to take on a project like this. And in my view, the current plan is a good plan. It balances heritage restoration, the landscaping, and the need for additional housing. And I think the current plan also appears to be financially viable. And this, I think, is very important. It means that the work can be done professionally and to a high standard. And it also means that the project will reach completion in a timely fashion. And I think after 2 years of deliberation, I believe now is the time to move forward. And therefore, I strongly support this project. And I really hope that council and the mayor will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. You obviously timed that because it was exactly 3 minutes, so well done. Anybody else wish to, oh, please come forward. Yep.
Good evening, Council. My name is Suzanne Hadler. I live also in a heritage home on Curry Road, across from Windsor Park, and I'm in favor of the Annandale development. The development, in my mind, will restore the heritage house and ensure its continued survival. The existing house is in a very rough shape. Shingles are flying off and wood is literally rotting away. If it's not restored, it's at the end of its life and may fall down altogether in an earthquake, just like the one we had last night. I personally went on site today to take a closer look at the state it's in. The development will extend the life of the heritage building, keeping a part of our community's history alive. The development will bring the heritage building up to current provincial building codes to make it much more stable and safer for its occupants. The building will also have a much greater chance of surviving an earthquake. The development structures are very well designed and attractive. The development will rotate the heritage building, which is set back and faces the side of the property so that it isn't visible from the street, so that the main entrance will face the street and be closer to the street so community members can admire it. The development's other buildings are designed in the same style as the existing heritage house, which is in keeping with the architecture of the surrounding community. It will feel like a historic property in my mind. The development significantly increases the curb appeal of the property. The development maintains the existing stone wall that blends the property into the neighboring houses and community, which is dotted with similar such walls. The development maintains a lot of green space, replacing some old Gary oaks that are close to the end of their lives and look like they might be at risk of falling, creating a safety hazard, with new Gary oaks, other trees, shrubs, and perennials to create a lovely garden in keeping what makes Oak Bay so special. I had 2 years ago at my house, I have also lots of oak trees. One oak tree just giving in the middle of summer, and luckily I just gone inside to get a tea. So I'm well aware of the hazard these old oak trees are at times, and I'm in favor of replacing them with new oak trees. The development includes landscaping features such as garden paths and stonework to enhance the property's gardens and visual appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few, I'm just going to go to one person online, but you're welcome to come forward at the moment, and I'll just take the online person, then you can come next. I have Pam Fawcett online. You wish to speak, please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Pam Fawcett, and I live in Oak Bay. I, too, am in favor of this application. I'll reiterate many of the reasons that everyone has already stated in terms that I think the design of it fits quite nicely in with the neighborhood. It provides additional housing. And we have a very committed person who wants to take this project on. The other point that I really want to emphasize is that this original application began in May of 2023, so we're coming up to 2 years. And the magnitude of this project deserves a strong process. But at the same time, it has gone through a very thoughtful and in-depth review by planning, by council, by Heritage, and by probably many others. And I just think that time is now that we do need to move this forward. If not, the risk, of course, is that the owner will potentially walk away from this, and then you're back to square one, and you may never find anyone else who would be willing to take on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fawcett. Next speaker, please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Terry Arcand, and I'm a resident of Oak Bay, and I'm going to bring a bit of a different perspective. I've only lived in, this is my 5th year coming into Oak Bay, and it's a small time, but I've learned to love Oak Bay in a huge way. And I see the value of our businesses here that support our lifestyle. We support them. I see the amazing public amenities that are just outside our door. I see the outstanding nature. I see the abundant opportunities to belong and to build friendships here. And equally, I see the way to give back by volunteering. Now, I came to Victoria after 15 years living in Vancouver. It's a wonderful city. I love that city as well. I experienced having been in a home in a new master planned structure of UBC campus. And then I went to a small family home in Dunbar. It is there that I witnessed the neighborhood sadly losing its historical glory and fall into many unkept, lifeless, streets that the businesses were collapsing, the homes were left unkept, and it was partly because things wanted to stay the same. And I see it was the same large lots, it was the same large houses, the same beautiful trees, the same views, but it was turning into a faded picture of the former. So the vibrancy was seriously struggling, and many factors had undoubtedly contributed. Along with those were years of choices that resisted looking forward and accepting change. So I hope to voice a reality, a vital one. Let us certainly preserve our special community, both its history and beginnings, what it is now, as well as its future life. We need to have housing options for singles, for young families to grow into, and for those entering their senior years, to continue to live where they love to live and have contributed many years of their lives to. The proposed project for Annandale does preserve and honor our Oak Bay heritage, as well as we all want to, and it also provides the needed options for our community. This is an offer from a developer to move us forward in sustaining our own future and to exercise prudent stewardship for those who are next. I fully support the Annandale project, and I look forward to the continued vitalization of Oak Bay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for speaking. Others wishing to speak? Please come forward. This has actually turned into a natural but effective system. We should have one seat there, and then I'll keep you third. Welcome.
So, dear Mayor and Council, my name is Marielle Geoffroy. I'm a resident of Oak Bay, and I love living in this municipality with all that it has to offer through its community and its neighborhood. I'm in favor of this proposal. I'm part of a large population of retired senior citizens living in Oak Bay who very much would like to age in place in their neighborhood. I need, like many others in this particular stage of life, to be able to move to a home that is not too big or that does not require extensive renovations to meet my needs, which is often the case when you have to look for homes that are, a certain age. I bring to your attention that I have met many people like myself who find it very difficult to find housing that fits these criteria in Oak Bay. I believe this particular project will be helpful in answering the growing demands for new accommodations in Oak Bay. It respects the beautiful heritage values of the neighborhood and offers a harmonious balance between the past and the present that meets the needs of a changing and growing city. I believe we have to find more creative ways to address the evolving realities of the city, and this project is a very good step in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Please come forward.
I have a handout for council that helps explain what my points in my speech are. Would it be okay to pass that around?
I think we can take it in, yeah. It'll form part of the record.
Yes. Also, when we call...
Just if you could just state your name and municipality of residence,
Sorry.
then we can start your time. There you go. Yeah, please, name and municipality, and please, you're welcome to address us.
I'm Barb Grant. I live in the HCA, Oak Bay. Mayor and Council, I'd like to build on the current proposal. According to the well-respected heritage consultant, John Dam, Oak Bay will experience a loss of heritage and environmental values if designated Annandale is moved and rotated, portions of its stone wall demolished, and its trees behind these breaks destroyed. The houses saved, but its heritage value lost. How is this of benefit to the community? According to the HCA bylaw, the Prospect Heritage Conservation Area was established a historic site for its, quote, unique combination of aesthetic, historic, social, environmental, and educational values, particularly its representation of the origins of the Oak Bay community in the late 19th century. Clearly, the current proposal to move and rotate Annandale means it will no longer represent the origins of the Oak Bay community in the late 19th century. If Council is willing to endorse such a plan, even though it contravenes the guidelines, municipal and federal, set in place by law to conserve Oak Bay's history and heritage, there are some simple amendments that will swing the scales more into balance, giving the community the benefit it deserves. Neighbors are supportive of converting Annandale into multiple units. They're also supportive of subdividing the property to allow the construction of a duplex beside Annandale. If the applicant is to get the land he wants, Annandale must move forward. What neighbors do not favor are plans for rotating the house. Doing so and siting the duplex right beside Annandale will block view corridors to the highly recognizable south side, the side that gives Annandale its architectural distinction and is featured in all historic photographs of Annandale. This is the side that is significant to the community and is visible on your handout. However, if Annandale is moved forward and not rotated, and the duplex is sited to the back of its lot, aligned with the back wall of the modern house on Lot 3, public view corridors to Annandale will be retained. Being able to see and appreciate Annandale is an important heritage value of benefit to the community. In an effort to preserve Annandale's setting to the greatest degree possible, which is yet another heritage value, neighbors favored use of the 2 original stone wall openings to preserve trees and walls. The duplex driveway could be directed through the stone wall opening in front of Annandale or through the opening in front of the modern house, whichever way saves more Gary Oaks. Another advantage of moving Annandale forward without rotating it is this. Since the site slopes downward to York Place, less blasting and excavation will be required for making parking under the west wing. What can be done to balance the scales, providing benefits for all stakeholders? 1, moving Annandale forward, but don't rotate it. 2, site the duplex to the back of the lot so it won't block view corridors to the south side, featured in all historic photos. 3, allow the 2 original entries through the stone wall to service the site, thus saving the trees to be destroyed if new cuts to the wall are made. To conclude, will we represent the origins of the Oak Bay community in the late 19th century with a plaque or with a historic house in context? Which would students, teachers, residents, and tourists rather see?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have you're next. I have you, and then over here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening,
My
welcome.
name is Emma Coatmans, and I'm a resident of Oak Bay. As immediate neighbors of Annandale, my family and I have followed this project closely over the past 2 years. This is a complex project with many variables to consider: heritage preservation, housing needs, environmental impact, and neighborhood character, to name a few. Through multiple revisions, incorporating council feedback, this proposal has evolved into a thoughtful and well-considered solution. Tonight, my family and myself express our full support for the latest iteration being brought forward to council and the community this evening. This proposal preserves Annandale's western wing, reduces blasting, increases housing, including affordable suites in the duplex property, and enhances tree preservation efforts, all while maintaining historical integrity. These are meaningful improvements that reflect a genuine effort to balance multiple priorities. As homeowners in a designated heritage property that was also part of a subdivision, we understand firsthand the challenge of balancing preservation with necessary change. And while preservation is very important, it must come with responsible action. In Annandale's case, years of deterioration have turned inaction into a growing risk. Structural decline is a growing problem, and given our very close proximity, our insurance company has raised fire hazard concerns. The longer this is left unaddressed, the greater the risk, not just to Annandale, but to surrounding properties, including other heritage structures like our own. Restoring Annandale is a significant undertaking that requires both substantial financial investment and specialist expertise. And while no plan can satisfy everyone, this proposal has been carefully designed to balance several factors while ensuring economic viability given the scale of this restoration. We also want to acknowledge Russ Collins and the Zebra design team, whose proven expertise in heritage restoration gives us confidence that this project will be approached with care and professionalism. As immediate neighbors, we will undoubtedly be among the most impacted by construction. However, we must face the current realities and acknowledge that allowing Annandale to continue deteriorating indefinitely is not an option. This is an opportunity to revitalize a significant heritage structure while addressing broader community needs. It is a strong, well-conceived plan, and we urge you to support it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Angus Matthews, Clive Drive here in Oak Bay. I decided I'd come to this meeting back on October 17th, 2019. The day I made that decision, I said I'd be here, and here I am. The reason I'm here is because that day I witnessed the CEO of Abstract Developments, the Director of Development from Abstract Developments, standing supervising a bunch of gleeful Abstract Development employees attack the wall. That's the day the wall came down. You all remember, who were on council at the time, you actually got together that same day for an emergency council meeting and put a stop work order on that act of vandalism. And I just wanted it to be on the record that these are the same people that committed that act of vandalism. And I don't actually have anything to say about the proposal itself. I've seen ever since back then, I was quite involved in some of the earlier proposals. And this one may indeed have merit, and that's for you all to decide. But I want to leave a message for staff and for council. Pay very close attention. The Heritage Revitalization Agreement needs to be ironclad. This particular developer requires close supervision, and the details and contractual arrangements that you make need to be bonded and secured in such a way that you actually get what you're bargaining for. To be frank, you're way out of your league negotiating with this group. They're very good at what they do, and you need all the help you can get to drive a hard bargain to make sure that the heritage values that people care so much about, even those that are in full support of the project, they need to make sure that you deliver and that the developer is made to deliver. The day that the wall came down, there was in the Victoria News a photograph, and I use that as evidence that this is fair comment on my part, that I'm not being unfair to this developer. But that's Tavi and Adam Cooper and me all standing there together, the three of us watching them tear the wall down. So please, be alert, be vigilant, pay attention. Ironclad, it's really got to be done and done properly. That's what I decided I'd come here and say back then, and I've said my piece, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. You're up next, and then...
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Irene Cockeen, and I lived in and owned the house for 42 years. I have shallow pockets, okay? So yes, it definitely needs some work, and I didn't have the vision, I didn't have the money, we actually tried to put through a heritage conservation with Oak Bay, and what we ended up with was parking for 14 cars next to the trees. And as you know, you can't park cars near the trees. They die. So I'm here to gush because I think this is the greatest, because it's going to make this house come back to life, and it's going to be useful. Lots of people are going to enjoy it. And, you know, almost once a month over those 42 years, someone would walk in through the gates and stand on the lawn looking at the house and say, gosh, I never knew that was here. How interesting. And they never actually got to walk around the entire house to see that the part that is on the east is the beautiful part. It's the part that welcomes people into this grand old home. So I'm really glad that they're going to rotate it and they're going to make it work for today and for the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cocaine. I had this gentleman first and then you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Don Bieberdorf, and my wife and I live immediately next door to the proposed development. We see Annandale every day out of our back window. We too have followed closely the development of the project. We've been to previous meetings. I must say a word of thanks to the staff and council. You've done a wonderful job of representing the interests of Oak Bay, our community, in ensuring this important project be completed appropriately. It's an important project. It's been 2 years, and I think, like so many of the other speakers, that it's time to move forward. This is a real opportunity, a rare opportunity to have somebody who's prepared to incur the significant expenses, go to the trouble of designing the project. Turning it around is an important part so that the community can enjoy it. Equally, it's important that the project be done. There's been a lot of construction in our neighborhood, and it's time to move forward and get it completed. The house is in a terrible state of decay, and it just needs to be revitalized. We fully support the application, my wife and I, and encourage you to approve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bieberdorf. Please come forward.
Mayor, council members, my name is Robert Craig. I live on Prospect Place in the Heritage Conservation Area. Tonight, I think the building side is going down the road so fast, nothing that I can say on that side, but I'm going to take the side of the trees. Firstly, I want to thank you for your efforts in supporting the interests of the people of Oak Bay. We greatly appreciate that. Secondly, I'm asking you to support the very trees that are the living symbol of our community, the Garry Oak. As I came in this evening, I checked to see if there was still a pair of acorn nuts on the front lawn. And symbolically, let's bring them inside the meeting. And thirdly, I sincerely ask, when is enough enough? We've been through this before. Some of us didn't expect the Trump-Musk mentality to exist so strongly here in Oak Bay. But here we are. The left brain sociopathic fever is right here in Oak Bay. Coincidentally, we see the pressures from the province that are also driven by developer interests, not just aimed at the Heritage Conservation Area, but also at the rest of Oak Bay. So my call is wake up. The sharks are circulating, they smell the blood, and they see the opportunity to make a lot of money at our expense.
Mr. Craig, I just want to make sure we're not making any sort of personal comments here.
Nope.
And just
No, no.
if you can speak as much to the application as you can,
Okay.
please.
Well, I'm speaking for the trees. Both the development proposals under consideration tonight attack not only our heritage, but also the very symbol and heritage of Oak Bay, the oak trees, especially the Garry Oaks. As some of you know, the Garry Oak root systems depend on a soil substructure, which is unique and almost impossible to recreate. Cutting down 20 mature oak trees to satisfy personal needs, I see as immoral. The HCA has already been compromised in a number of ways. Please note that one mature oak tree supports carbon capture for hundreds of years, and that if you don't cut them down. You might want to read a book called Our Green Heart by Diana Beresford Kroger, a world-renowned scientist on this. To cut down oak trees in the HCA seems like a mean Trump-like proposal to stick it to those who are trying to protect Oak Bay from becoming the Oak Bay Lumber Company. And as some are saying, which comes complete with its own marching band. I have to believe that the majority of the council members support the people of Oak Bay and not the developers. As you consider your decisions on the matters at hand, please do not give in to fear and ask yourselves, what would the founding fathers of Oak Bay say if they were here now? Your fathers and grandfathers. Thank you for your service, and thank you for standing up to the sharks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Craig. Her and then you. I'll call you up next. Please go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Jill Pollard, Oak Bay. I am a resident in Oak Bay's first heritage conservation area, referred to as the Prospect. I've lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years and enjoyed learning about the characters who resided in this historic part of Oak Bay, many of whom are an important part of Victoria's history. To protect this area, there is a bylaw in place, which I understand our current mayor was part of forming. Annandale was purchased in 2022 under the assumption that the purchasers were advised of the heritage designation of the home, land, and rock wall. We now live under the threat of history being destroyed. I am appalled this council would consider lot lines be adjusted just to service the widening of an adjacent driveway, move and rotate a historic home whose orientation and context tells a significant story of Oak Bay's early development, do nothing to designate rooms, original fixtures, and fireplaces, which, if you refer to the 2022 real estate listing, were well preserved, allow for the invasions to the historic rock wall and consequent loss of mature Gary Oaks, when the two original rock wall gate entries could service 3 dwellings just as well, or better, because their shared use would save many Gary Oaks. I am in favor of converting Annandale into multiple units, and I am supportive of subdividing the property to allow for the construction of a duplex beside Annandale. I could even reluctantly support moving Annandale forward, as long as it's not rotated and the infill duplex beside it is moved to the back of the lot, Lot 2. The public needs to be able to see and appreciate Annandale and its recognizable south side featured in all historic photographs. A couple of simple adjustments to the current proposal will balance the benefit to the developer along with the benefit to the community and its heritage program. These are: 1, moving Annandale forward and not rotating, and 2, siting the infill duplex to the back of its lot and routing its driveway through the original rock wall gate entry in front of Annandale, or through the rebuilt wall gate entry in front of the garage house conversion, whichever way saves more Gary Oaks. Should the submitted proposal be approved as is, I strongly suggest Annandale be de-designated as a heritage site, no plaques erected, and no accolades given. Annandale will just be another home on York Place with all history lost. In conclusion, I firmly believe if this development proposal is not given another look and simple amendments made, there will be serious consequences for the preservation of Oak Bay's history. This is no ordinary area. Let's make it something we and future generations can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollard. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Glenn Miles, and I live at 2310 Oak Bay Avenue at the corner of Clive Drive, so I'm very close to the project. I'm in favor of the proposal, and I look at it from 2 points of view. I think it's a win-win for the residents of Oak Bay, of which I've been a participant for 75 years, in that we get a beautiful old house preserved. And I think more importantly, having been involved in the real estate industry for a long time, we add to our existing residential stock. So from those two aspects, I'm very much in favor, and I hope you approve of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Kerr. I'm an Oak Bay resident. I'm here to speak in favor of the application. I have some unique perspective, I think, when it comes to heritage projects. I sat for a number of years on the Victoria Civic Heritage Trust, and as some of you may know, at the Civic Heritage Trust, on behalf of the city, the trust administers tax incentive programs, building incentive programs, and other forms of grants to support heritage preservation. So in my years as a director of the trust, I saw and reviewed a number of applications on behalf of owners of property that either in whole or in part had heritage value. And so I perhaps have some unique perspective just in terms of the sheer volume of applications that we reviewed. It struck me throughout the course of my time that there are unique economic challenges to preserving heritage property. And so in that respect, I'm adding my voice to the pile that I've heard so far this evening who have made similar remarks. So my perspective, I fall into the group of people who believe that there doesn't need to be tension between development and the preservation of heritage property. In fact, I fall into the category of people who believe that development is the path to preservation of heritage property. As a number of people have said, and I've said before, there are unique economic challenges, and there doesn't need to be that tension. So unless benefactors are going to fall from the sky like angels to write checks to help us rescue heritage property, it strikes me that development is the path forward, such as this. So with this project in particular, I believe that there are a unique set of challenges, including reorienting the property along York Street. And it seems to me that the developer owner has gone to some lengths in the course of resubmitting several times to try and address the concerns of the community and other stakeholders. In particular, in the August resubmissions, it appears to me that they've gone to some lengths to try and make the existing Annandale house with the infill property speak and relate from the street. And they've even gone to some lengths by offering some affordability accommodations to the project. So it strikes me that some significant efforts have been made to accommodate community concerns, including preservation of trees. And I'd like to see this process move forward. And it looks to me like a good project. And it's the type of adaptive reuse that I think we need to rely on to preserve our heritage in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Please come forward. And I'll just remind anybody who's watching online, if you do wish to participate and speak to us through the Zoom application or phone, the instructions for that are on the agenda package.
Do you want me to go home and phone?
I do not.
Okay.
Please go ahead and speak.
My name is Bob Wallace. I live at 1584 Prospect Place inside the Heritage Conservation Area. I do not, or my wife and I do not own a heritage house. So why are we there? Simply because I like heritage. I am within 10 years of becoming heritage according to the definitions of everything here. But anyways, it goes on. There are many things that were said and will be thought of amongst this whole thing. The last gentleman did give us a nice way that we could work nicey-nicey, but it hasn't gone that way. Anyhow, because it took over 5 years, a year and a half of blasting, and the rest of everything else with 2 and 3 and 4 people on their lot in order to build that building. Yet we have overheard that we were a block to them building. They didn't have people on the body on there. So what? So another 4 years of everything else. The people in York Place down at the far end are nuts with that thing because they've had trucks and up and down there for a long time. So there was a condition on blasting which we believe was incorrectly put out. Now, as far as the house is concerned, Annandale, in this case, has anybody checked the founding of it downstairs and find out if it is still good? It must be if they're going to pick it up and move it. So why move it? It's a big cost. Well, of course, there has to be a commercial reason for this. The one thing that has really been keeping me on the same sort of thing is that we have an 80-foot oak tree shared by us, but it's on our lot. So they do go old. So I take embrace to anybody who, because of the composition of the tree itself, plus what is underneath it, how it grows and everything else. I look like hell sometime when that wind comes and think maybe our house should get really insured, but it's still there. It's very, very strong, and it's shared with one of the other, of a person that says that it really is okay, but it isn't. It's old. Now, one thing on other construction, and again, back on the construction train, across the street, the developer and his group there was a walkway to the back door. And it took eventually many times appearing in front of or having people complaining about it and taking it to your staff to have that repaired after a long time. And it had a cross over it and everything else. It was very, very dangerous, but there didn't seem to be any real move to help that. The fact of
Mr.
having...
Wallace, your 3 minutes is up, but are you able to wrap it up, or do you want to come back to continue?
Oh, me?
Yes.
I can talk forever.
I appreciate that. Are there any other members of the audience who wish to come forward and speak to council?
Would I?
Yeah, you can go there. Oh, more handouts. Same process, just name the municipality of residence.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Ken Grant, and I live in the HCA. Closer? What's that? Oh. Speaking on behalf of myself and the neighbors, we are not rejecting, but accepting many of the proposal's parameters. For instance, we accept that there will be development and that the house may be moved, but we have some concerns, and we'd like to present a few friendly amendments that address these concerns. The bylaw that established Oak Bay's Heritage Conservation Area states as its #1 objective to maintain the distinctive character of the Prospect neighborhood as expressed by the layout of the neighborhood, the collection of early homes, as well as the gardens, streetscape, and landscape features. Alternatively, citing the infill duplex to the back of the lot, align it with the back wall of the new modern house on Lot 3, will preserve public views of Annandale from sidewalk and street. For the public to want to see and appreciate Annandale's recognizable south side, featured here, that picture back there, on Council Chambers Wall, is a reasonable ask. Annandale was originally designed to be like a country estate in the city. It's not enough to preserve the building. It's the context with mature Gary Oaks and stone wall. That's important to the house too. Please take a look at your handout. This artist's rendering shows the Gary Oaks and stone wall on Annandale site. These trees have been contributing to the rural character of York Place and helping to combat climate change for over a century. The Gary Oaks and sections of stone wall to be eliminated are colored in white. The district manager of Park Services, Chris Heideley, has confirmed that, quote, "the oaks in the 1911 photo are the ones standing today," unquote. Thoughtful site planning and the utilization of the 2 existing stone wall entries will preserve 20 trees, the integrity of the stone wall, and the streetscape. Currently, the Annandale property represents to residents and visitors a glimpse of how Oak Bay developed in the late 19th century. Keep this narrative intact to the greatest extent possible. In making your decision, lean on law, not opinion. Don't rotate Annandale. Preserve the distinctive south side featured in all the historic photos. Site the infill duplex to the back of its lot, aligned with the back wall of the new modern house on Lot 3, to keep public view corridors open, and protect Annandale's historic context. Use the existing entries to save trees and wall. A massive effort has gone into the creating legal protection for this historic site, which is of national interest. Please do your best to preserve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Please come forward.
Pam Copley, City of Victoria, but for many years a resident of Oak Bay, as you are aware. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Mayor and Council. I have previously stated my support for this application, and I will do so again tonight. Many of the points that I was going to make have already been really very clearly made by other proponents who are, or rather other people here tonight who are in support of the application. Just a couple of points, if I might, though. One is that the proposed development for Annandale through an HRA does achieve the sensitive rehabilitation of what has been pointed out is a very badly deteriorated heritage house, but of great importance to the citizens of Oak Bay. That's been made very clear. But while increasing the housing supply to 8 units, including one affordable housing unit. So that, I think, is the important point here as well. If in our ever-changing world, adapting and repurposing heritage structures breathes new life into them, and at the same time can help address contemporary social issues, including housing supply and affordability, and social isolation, which hasn't been mentioned. So the goal is to keep the property vital and viable, not to create a museum. And I think the overall benefits to the community have also been stated, helping to increase housing options as defined by the provincial mandate, respecting and complementing the historic character of the streetscape, and offering new models for creating community within community for many demographics seeking alternatives to high-end single-family homes. I was one of those people. I was looking for one of those places in Oak Bay. But another point, as the threat of U.S. tariffs looms, expediting the two projects under consideration, Annandale and the Morris House, will be more critical than ever as housing may become even less affordable if an economic downturn sets in. Lastly, please consider carefully the very likely outcome of not approving this application. It has already been mentioned by several before me. If the project is turned down, I think the chance of Annandale surviving is fairly remote. So we do have to ask how that outcome would be in the best interests of the community, and that has even been mentioned by Ms. Cocaine, who was the previous owner of the property for many years. So I fully support the project as it's being proposed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the side room, perhaps, or in the main room that wishes to speak? You can just raise your hand. It's very friendly in here. Please come forward. Welcome. It's already on.
That's right. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Pamela Ubita. I'm a resident of St. David Street, just a block down from the development. I walk by it daily, and I've been keeping my eye on the development. I was really surprised by all the positive feedback here today, to be honest, given my experience in the neighborhood with development. So, it's great to see the neighbors directly next door supporting it. And I think, being in the industry, we rely on private money to renovate heritage homes and to create housing stock. And I think that anybody willing to take the risk and use their money to do that should be heard. So I fully support this project. I support the density, the variety of homes. I think everybody has spoken really well today about the positives that come out of it. I love trees, but trees don't provide homes for humans, and they don't pay for renovation. So I think there has to be a balance, and I think that balance has been found in this project. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Betty Molnar and I live on Prospect Place. I want you to know I have crossed off most of my speech has been covered, and it's been covered plenty, but it was about the trees and the canopy they provide, and the fact that as Canada is really failing globally for our global warming, and if we can preserve 20 trees, I think 20 trees would be worth preserving, especially Gary Oaks. I want to quote a Canadian singer-songwriter, Joni Mitchell, who said, "Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They pave paradise and they put in a parking lot." I think everybody in this room knows what will be lost if this proposal is approved in its existing form. There's other ways around it. There's other ways to build. The derelict property as it sits has been under the ownership of Abstract. They have done nothing to preserve, maintain, or upgrade that property in the time in which they've owned it. And do we any of us here actually think this is going to be affordable housing. I'd be really, really surprised with the cost of this project that affordable housing is what's going to come out of it in the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll invite others to speak. Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor and Council, my name is Karen Wallace Prince, and I live in the Prospect HCA. Like Betty just said, most of my speech has been said. I'll try to go through it, and maybe I can cut as I go, but Annandale, in its current context, tells, well, not its current right now, but its current context tells the story of a grand architect-designed home in a rural setting. This was the sales pitch that early developers used in the late 1800s to attract people to the area. It was all about the view of Mount Baker and the sea. And although development to the east has now obscured that view, the house still tells its original story. Here's an opportunity to save something special and unique to Oak Bay, something that will spur conversation, keep this street unique, and something people will come to see. What's going to make the HCA stand out as different and interesting, worthy of a special visit? How many natural Gary Oak woodlands are there left in Oak Bay? And how many are in someone's front yard and can be seen from the street? Annandale, in its current context, tells a compelling story of Oak Bay's development in the 19th century. This story should be retained. Please consider a few amendments to the HRA application that others have very much mentioned. Of course, if you're going to move it forward, don't rotate it. And of course, set the new duplex to the back so that we can continue to see the side of Annandale once it's restored. And of course, the changes mean that we can see the view of the Annandale's verandas, which are spectacular. It would allow no new cuts in the stone wall. There's a planning to put 2 new cuts into it. And use the existing driveways to wind through the Gary Oaks to the homes. And this, of course, would be less blasting. And preservation of the rural ambiance that Annandale's Gary Oaks contribute to the distinctive character of York Place. Building on the current proposal, these changes constitute a significant improvement. They better honor historic assets and environmental values while building housing. The community stands to gain an improved proposal that better retains Annandale's historic context and streetscape character and better complies with the district's Heritage Conservation Area guidelines. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace-Prince. Next speaker. Anybody in the adjacent room? I don't see hands online at this point. But if anybody online wishes to speak, you can raise your hand in the app or call the 855 number that's on the agenda and hit *9. Don't see anybody coming out of the side room or raising hands in this room. Oh, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Michael Prince, and I live at 1525 Prospect Place in the HCA. I think there's a lot of common ground here tonight. Many of the benefits and arguments for people speaking in favor of the application as it currently stands, I can support quite easily. Diversity of housing options, absolutely. Whether that's affordable or not, that's for another time and another debate. Allowing people to age in place, allowing younger people the hopes of an affordable condo or a secondary suite or a duplex. Terrific. I thought the remarks from the owner of Ottavio's very important. Staffing for local businesses, 100%. Environmental reasons of, they say, the greenest house is one that's already standing, particularly one built with old growth lumber. Yep. And addressing the need for the upkeep of the Annandale house. All of that can be accomplished without moving the house. All of those. But you've heard many of my neighbors, they've moved over the last couple of years. They've heard, they've seen the application evolve, they've evolved, and they're saying some important compromises to you tonight to make this as good a balanced development application as possible. To move the house forward, but don't rotate it. Revitalization does not require rotation. And to think about the public siting. Spinning the house because it'll enhance curb appeal. There's nothing in the HCA bylaw that established a heritage conservation area that talks about curb appeal. Talks about history. Some people have been around this issue for 2 years. I've been around it for 10 years. 5 years to get the HCA in place, and the last 5 years seeing the development and implementation of the HCA. I got skin in this game. But that time isn't an argument for approving an application. Saying, let's move forward now, 2 years, enough's enough. That's not a good enough reason. Look at the law, look at the bylaw, look at the objectives in the bylaws that you have an obligation to look at and uphold. But what you're hearing from a lot of my friends and neighbors is, we want to see Mr. Miller halfway. We're not quite there yet. And they're offering you some tangible, concrete compromises to make this development go forward. So it does provide more housing options, subdivision, densification, revitalization. It's a big challenge. It's a big project, absolutely. So this is what we're presenting to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prince. Anyone else wish to come forward? Yes, you can come forward for a second time. If you have new things to say, we welcome that. I will take the opportunity once these are done and probably turn some of the comments or questions to the applicants. If they can answer them, I'll give them that opportunity. Please go ahead.
Robert Craig, I live in the HCA. What I failed to mention, because I ran out of time, was I came to the Prospect in 2001 to spend my golden years in a lovely place. Instead, it's been a continual construction zone for the 24 years of noise and congestion. And with this proposal, especially with the blasting aspect to it, I see another 10 years or something of congestion and noise. It'll completely, unless I live to be 110 or 20, it'll completely destroy my objective of coming here to a lovely place for a golden retirement.
Thank you. Yeah, please come forward for a second time if you wish. Just mind if you just state your name again.
Sharman Linus, live in the HCA. I was taking notes as I listened to some speakers, so this is going to be a little bit scattered. It's just to point out a few things. So Mrs. Cockayne, who had lived, that was her house for 40 years, she tells a story of how people quite often would walk through her entrance and stand on the front lawn and look at the veranda and say how beautiful it was. That is the view we want to preserve. That's why we don't want the house spun. That's the veranda view. That is the view. So even the original owner feels that that was very important to preserve. And as has been pointed out, it would be easier not to spin it. Obviously, that's an extra charge, a lot of money. The apartments that are supposedly going to be affordable, that's quite nice, but I guess it all depends on what's affordable. Will a barista be able to afford that rent? They only be paying, say, $800 or $900 a month? Who knows? I don't know what kind of laws you can put in to make them affordable. But then if you also think of the people who are going to buy one of the duplexes with the affordable apartment, as if they're forced to have a lower rent, that might put buyers off. I can see the whole thing becoming quite messy and perhaps being rejected eventually, that we can't do this because we can't sell the house, so we're going to have to just sell it as a duplex with an extra apartment, which may or may not be rented. Just because it's an apartment in the basement doesn't mean that the person who owns that house has to rent it out. So, the idea that there's going to be a lot of affordable housing because of this development doesn't really fly as far as I'm concerned. the number of people who have said that the house is decaying, I've been in and seen what the house stands on. It stands on rock with very old growth. I think it was cedar. Massive, massive, great square pillars that every one comes from the basement roof down to that particular bit of rock, and then was put in place for every little bit of the undulation of the rock. The basement was very dry, even though it was tamped earth, right? Mostly rock, to be honest. It was very dry, didn't smell moldy, unlike my basement that had to be revitalized. So the house is standing on a very good foundation. Anything that's decaying, I would say, is cosmetic. It's not going to fall down. All the people that are saying it's going to fall down, I doubt very much if it's going to fall down. And this brings me to the heritage maintenance bylaw, which I believe staff are working on currently, which would be made so that people who own heritage designated houses must maintain them to a certain state. We don't have that law in the books right now, but sometimes it is ignored by people to let a house rot or, don't paint it so it looks worse, so that it legitimizes what they're asking. And then there's money. Money was mentioned a lot, and time. And I'd like to say that the time and money that an applicant expends in getting his things together, they're developers. This is what they do. This is their job. And who knows how the world swings? Who knows how lumber prices swing? Those are all variables. And I would like to urge council to put that to one side, that to not make that part of the decision. It's not up to you to think about that. What's up to you is to think about the bylaw and the fact that the HCA exists in its current form, and are we respecting it? If we get to the point where money talks like this and influences, that's a very slippery slope to go on. And finally, in response to Angus Matthews' speech, I was there in October 2019. It was a very rainy day, and one of the neighbors on York Place texted me to say that the wall was being destroyed. I literally put my jeans on over my pajamas and ran up the road to see what was happening. I took film on York Place. I took film on Prospect Place. There was a man with a pneumatic drill on Prospect Place tearing at the wall, and I stood on the public side of the wall and draped my umbrella and my body over the wall to make him stop. And I followed him up and down. And Mr. Miller's factotum threatened 5 times to call the police, and I said, do it. And he did. And he called the police on me, and I was still on the public side of the wall. And the police asked me to come down. Not that I really wanted to. But meanwhile, I had left a message on your phone, Mr. Mayor, to say, please do something. And thankfully, you managed to get an emergency meeting together of council.
I'm going to ask that you wrap this up.
Okay,
Well
to
over
get
3
that
minutes.
order. So anyway, I would like to say, as far as skin in the game, we all, as residents, have a lot of skin in the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minas. And there will be an opportunity if you wish to come forward again. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. There are some hands online. So I have second-time speakers. I have Pam Fawcett again. Pam Fawcett, sorry. I put the wrong emphasis on that. Please go ahead.
That's okay. Yes, Pam Fawcett, and I live in the HCA as well. I've been listening with interest to the comments and concerns regarding the turning of the home. I attended a previous council meeting when this application was being discussed, and this might be just helpful from education, because since we are chatting about history and things like that, in the previous council meeting, it was presented that there has been precedent set in other heritage homes in Oak Bay, either being moved or repositioned or turned. And so I guess that's just an important part of this discussion as well, is to be aware of that and to know that this is not the first time that a heritage home is being proposed to be turned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, if you have some additional things to say, please come forward. Oh, there we go.
Ken Grant, I live in the HCA. about turning homes. Perhaps these pictures on the wall of all the heritage houses in Oak Bay, have any of them been turned? Something to think about. Rotating Annandale and siting the infill duplex right beside it will change the layout of the neighborhood and block view corridors to the recognizable south side of Annandale, featured in all the historic photographs since 1897. Canada's national standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada, which the HCA bylaws says to inform is to inform policy decisions for the HCA, recommends against interventions like removing trees intended to frame an important view of a historic place. I've been to many council meetings where people have asked for permission to remove one tree from their property for various reasons, but council has firmly upheld Oak Bay's tree protection bylaw and turned down their request. In this case, the request is to remove 20 trees, a small forest of mature Gary oaks. These slow-growing trees and the historic stone wall, according to the HCA bylaw, protecting the site, contribute significantly to the site's heritage value. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak, first or second time? I don't see anybody, so I think there's probably some of the comments here may have raised some questions for members of council if they wish to ask the applicant or staff. I'd probably invite those at this time. Certainly, if there's anything that needs some clarification, this is the time to ask them. If not, we can move forward. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks. I'm going to go straight to the not rotating the house, as I'm not sure if you received a copy of the picture that was handed out to council. It does look, has that been considered to move the house forward in its current state without being rotated and move the duplex back? Because to me, when I look at this looks like it could be, and from what you've heard from the residents around there, this would be very acceptable to them. They're not against the duplex. They're not against the other things that you're doing in that area, but to not rotate the house would be, and in my opinion, would be a better thing. So can we maybe just touch on whether that was considered?
Sure. I'll invite the applicant, probably.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So the question here, yeah, just the rationale or perhaps an explanation of why the rotation and not just, and the possibility of moving the house, the duplex back, the house forward, et cetera.
Great. Once again, my name is Mark Holland. I'm technically the applicant. I'm going to defer to our team here. So we've got Dr. Katie Kummer, who's our heritage consultant. We've got Russ Collins here from Zebra Design, who's already been spoken about here this evening. In this case, I'd like to defer to Russ Collins, if that would be okay, Your Honor, to do this.
Yeah, that sounds good. I was going to call on him directly, but you jumped in there, so. Welcome, Mr. Collins. Maybe
Hello.
just state your name for the record.
Russ Collins from Zebra Design. Yeah, we've considered all options with regard to the house and moving it, turning it. What we've realized is the front of the house is facing east, not the part that faces York Place. And we've given it a lot of consideration, and we really feel that to really celebrate Annandale, that house needs to be turned so people can see the front. And in fact, if you look at the heritage papers that Katie drew up, there's a picture of the front of the house with the owner standing in front of it. And so that's a fairly significant photograph in our opinion, because it's like owners standing out in front of their home, not to the side of their home. So we feel it's quite important to have that facing York.
The second part of that question was just consideration of locating the duplex further back on the lot to ensure there's a bit of a substantial view corridor from the street as you're walking down.
I missed that part.
Yeah.
We actually already have set the duplex a little bit further back than the front of Annandale. There's room that we could move it back a bit further. I don't agree with the idea of pushing it as far back as the garage next door, because that gives basically no backyard at all for the duplex. So it's something we could consider, I'm sure.
Braithwaite?
Thank you. And then the other picture that we received was in regards to the trees and not having to put new holes in the wall, but use the existing holes and trying to save, it looks like about 20 oak trees by doing so.
My belief is that by trying to push our driveways through the existing holes in the rock wall will just cause us to take a different 20 set of trees down. If you look carefully at the drawings and see the original trees and where they're located, there's lots of trees that'll get taken out if we have to try and cut across front yards in order to do that. So I think what we've done and how we proposed it is saving the most trees that we can.
If you might just, can you just speak to, I know it's in the report, but maybe just a reminder as to the rationale for the 20 trees? They're not all taken down for location, are they? Is it 20? And perhaps helpful for us to understand we have pretty strong tree protection bylaws here. I appreciate this is a comprehensive redevelopment plan. What changes are going to be made on the overall for the
Maybe
site
it would be
context?
best if our landscape designer spoke to that, because she's quite aware of Melissa. She's here on virtually.
There we go. Ms. Lim, welcome.
Hi, Mayor and Council.
Can you
Melissa
speak up a
Lindgren.
little bit? You're very, very faint in the background.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, almost not.
Can you hear me now?
No, I didn't change anything, interestingly. Maybe just check which microphone the app is using. Sometimes it picks up an external app, like a headset.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, you're very quiet. Interestingly, we can hear you, but it's just incredibly, incredibly quiet.
My apologies. Maybe I'll go really close to my phone and turn my camera off here.
Yeah, it is incredibly. Are you sure there's not headsets or something connected? Because it sounds almost like it's going through a microphone of a headset sitting on your desk.
I don't have a headset. No, I'm actually
Okay.
on my mobile here. Hold on a second.
I'll tell you what, can I, Ms. Lim, can I just get you to call try calling the 1-855 number and just use the phone that way? That might be the simplest way of doing it.
Okay.
If you have the agenda package there, it's the 855 number, and then the ID and passcode are there to enter to get into Zoom. And I'm happy to just move to another question in the intervening time. Go ahead, Councilor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And then I'd like to see if someone can speak to the affordable aspect of the proposal, explain how that works, because there were a few questions on, like how do you keep a unit, if it's in the basement of the duplex, how do you keep that affordable when selling the duplex? So if you can just speak to that, please.
Sure. I think it's probably best to Mr. McStravick, but if Mr. Collins wishes to chip in. Welcome back, Mr. McStravick.
Thank you, through your worship, or through the chair. I'll just, if it's okay, I'll just read very briefly from my February 10th staff report, which discussed this. There will be a housing agreement. There is a housing agreement bylaw that is accompanying this proposal, and there will also be a Section 219 covenant registered on title for the affected parcel, should council decide to move ahead with this, which would mirror the language of that housing agreement bylaw. And the effect of it is that under this agreement, the permitted rent for the units is tied to an annual figure published by BC Housing, and the rent shall not exceed 30% of the annual household income limits, again defined by BC Housing, for low and moderate income households. And that's an annual figure that BC Housing would publish. So the administration of that is up to the owners of the houses, but the district would have an enforcement right enshrined through the housing agreement bylaw and the covenant, again, which mirrors that language.
is now online. Yes, you're welcome. Welcome back to the meeting.
Hi, Mayor and Council. This is Melissa calling from MDI Landscape Architect.
Great, and you sound crystal clear, so thank you for doing that.
Okay, perfect. Apologies for the technical
No worries.
difficulties. Can you repeat the question about the trees?
Sure. Don't me to. Just would like some clarification about the A, the rationale for the 20 trees that are being removed, and B, what other work is done to essentially compensate or manage the expectation that tree canopies not be reduced in the district.
Sure. Okay. So the majority of the trees that are being removed are within driveway access points. There's a couple important things that we are able to do on this project. Under the existing canopy of those Gary oak trees, currently it is filled with, or there are large portions of the landscape that have been taken over by invasive plants. So what this proposal allows us to do is actually also revitalize the land in that Gary oak ecosystem. So we will be planting new native shrubs and other plants in that existing Gary oak understory, and also planting successional Gary oaks in that York Place frontage, as well as in other areas of the site. So for each lot, we are exceeding the proposed tree canopy requirement by quite a bit. The minimum is 35%, and as you can see there, we're well over the minimum 35% for all lots. We are planting 14 new Gary oaks on lots 1, 2, and 3, and we are also planting a variety of other species. So the successional Gary oak plantings will provide that long-term canopy. But in the meantime, while those Gary oaks are growing, we're also planting other species of plants that will provide shade before those trees get up to the 100-year size.
Thank you for that answer. Councillor Braithwaite, did you have other questions related to that? Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute you for now, and then if I need you back again, I will unmute you, if that's all right, Ms. Lim.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And if I could just ask this through you, ask again for the landscaper here, if she could speak to the, we've heard a lot of commentary concerning the unique soil conditions necessary for the Gary oak landscape to thrive. And so with the construction that will take place and with the disruption of the land, what would be done to try and enhance or maintain that unique soil characteristic?
And I will. I thought I could unmute. I can't. I can just ask to unmute. I think it's, my apologies. The instructions are on the agenda package. Oh, you got it there. You're unmuted. Thank you. Welcome back, Ms. Lim.
Thanks for the question. So there's a few things we'll be adding some new soil without disturbing the roots under the Gary oak trees. Mulch is really important. We'll be mulching under the new Gary oak trees, and that will allow for acorns to fall from the existing trees and hopefully to germinate in that rich mulch layer that has native plants and improved biodiversity in the understory.
Thank you. I might just follow up on that since you're here. It's just there was questions raised, and it is true that Gary oaks are slow growing, but you can purchase Gary oaks at various different stages. Can you give us a sense of what's intended to be planted there for the new trees? Like what age or size of trees are being considered for the new plantings?
Yeah, good question. What we're proposing is the 4 to 5 centimeter caliper tree. So that's about 2 inches chest height, and that's a size that we found to be a good. It's available from nurseries locally, and also it's small enough that it can establish. They've got a long taproot, so there are challenges with growing Gary oak trees, and that's the size where the taproot is not deep enough, and it's allowed. It's an appropriate size to establish. Sometimes we have problems with sourcing Gary oaks of that size. So at the time of construction, we'll be looking at what's available locally.
I appreciate that clarification. Looking to other questions from members of council to the applicant or to staff at this time. Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to be reminded what was happening to the property line behind Annandale. Did we? I'm trying to remember what we decided at council before. If we decided to change the property line behind Annandale, because I know there was some question of being able to blast at the back of the property for the property on Prospect Place for the driveway, and so just if we could clarify if the property line is changing at the back of Annandale, because again, I look at this drawing that I see in front of me, and it would be, to me, a really good way to make more people happy by moving Annandale forward and the duplex back, and having a happy neighborhood in there. Anyhow, just if you could tell me about the property line at the back of Annandale, please.
Yeah, I believe there's a modest modification to the back of the property. I don't remember exactly what the shape of it is, but I don't think it's...
I think we're going to bring it up on the screen here.
Yeah, maybe we could have a look.
Thank you. I'll just try to go to the slide showing the proposed lot layout. Tom, perhaps you could just move it forward for me. Oh, I see. I was at the back. I can take over. There we go. So it is a little small, but if you're able to make out...
This is the existing...
This is the current site plan, and to the bottom left again is the Annandale house, and you can see that the existing property line is in a heavy black to the north of it. The pointer doesn't work, unfortunately, on the television. It disappears. Yeah. Anyways, and so then on the following slide, you'll see that that property line moves much closer to the Annandale house, moves westward, and it becomes a straight line across the 3 new proposed properties. And for the relationship to the blasting, I'll leave that to the applicants.
Yeah, I can't quite read the amount it's moving. He's right, there's an adjustment behind Annandale, like it sticks out quite a bit further than where the duplex is going. But I can't quite read how many feet that it's moving.
Thank you. Not seeing any other questions here. There was one of the questions raised that I just thought, for clarification, there was conversation about some of the internal features of the heritage home, and I know that we just had a lot of conversation in the process, and I think noted that they're not protected. But can you perhaps speak briefly, just briefly, but what changes are happening to the internals? I know that the internal layout will have to shift a bit, but also what of the identified heritage sort of features inside the building are being kept, and what is being lost.
My understanding is that there are at least 3 fireplace mantles that were going to be retained. They're going to be, the chimneys have to be reconstructed because they're going to be, they're too heavy and they can't be moved. So they'll get rebuilt, and then the fireplaces will be reconstructed once that's done. And then other features in the unit, like in the house, there's quite quite an interesting den detail that wood paneling that we're going to try and reuse inside, but there's no, at this point, no way of knowing exactly how that's going to get done, but our intention is to try to keep as many things as we can that are existing and reuse them inside the building, including some doors too.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And just for clarification, is there any, so right now we have the primary building, the Annandale building is being proposed to be rotated on the lot. There was a question there about the quality of the current foundation and things. Is there, I mean, outside of the proposal to turn the face of the building towards the street, which we talked a lot about at the last meeting, is there any other specific rationale for access or anything else that for making that change, or is that the primary purpose is to provide the sort of the effective face to the street?
That's the primary reason. I would say the other reason is because when we made the decision, because the council asked us to keep the whole building intact and not remove the west wing, when we thought about it, we could spin it around, and it was a perfect opportunity to have access to parking under the building instead of having to try to put it in the backyard. And so that's why we put the garages under that portion of the building. It'd be I think a little bit more difficult to try and do it under the other part of the building because of the verandas in that part. We just think it wouldn't be as, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Preserving the house as well, in my opinion. I think where we've done it and how we're doing it, to me, looks better than to try to put it under that part of the house. It's a much nicer part of the building than the back, west-facing side that's there now.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question just for your heritage consultant, if that's possible. And it's just, I'll give you my question as you're walking forward. It's just, the question was raised, and I think a legitimate one. I mean, obviously, we always struggle as we make changes to, or modifications to heritage, what is an appropriate amount. Can you just speak a little bit to what, in your perspective of this, there was a comment made, and I understand where it comes from, that does a designation even count anymore if the house has been changed significantly or moved significantly? And so maybe just at a high level, just talk to, where this is in the heritage scale of things and the rationale for the changes that have been proposed.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Katie Kummer. I'm the Heritage Consultant. It's a very good question, and I think it's important to remember. So this is one of the struggles, obviously, with the heritage field in general, is it really is the management of change, and so it's sort of recognizing these places but helping guide them forward. The heritage designation basically does not mean that it gets frozen in time, and I think that's really important to remember, is that it does mean that it has to go through the heritage alteration permit process. It needs to go through these approvals. It needs to get consideration and approval for any of these changes, but it doesn't mean that changes can't happen. And I think that's something that I'm trying to reconcile with in terms of guiding this project forward, because obviously it is quite a bit of change. I would argue, certainly from my perspective, obviously, the fact that the building is being kept in its entirety now as a designated property, this certainly makes it much more supportable. And I do think it's valuable to kind of keep that in mind. If I may, to speak to your other question, to Russ actually, in terms of the rotation of it, I would say one of the reasons that when this was first proposed to me, I kind of went, that's insane. What are you talking about? Why would you do that? But as I dug into it more and kind of found more of the photographs, one comment that keeps coming up is about all of the historical photographs show it from this side. Well, that's actually not true. It's just we've been able to find more of them. And as Russ rightly pointed out too, them standing in front of their house. I mean, you should have felt my heart when I found this photograph, to be able to see these two individuals standing outside their home and being so proud of that front. It kind of made me go, okay, maybe this isn't as crazy as it could be. And the idea of being able to bring back the more intact portion of the house to the streetscape, to allow us to be able to see the part. So fair enough, the western end was a part of it historically, but it has undergone the most change of any part of the building. Most of the windows are no longer the original ones. The configurations are not what they used to be. The side that we're hoping to actually bring back to the street. I'm so sorry, am I limited to 3 minutes too?
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
sorry.
It's just my watch is too smart for my own good. It's giving me notices of other things that totally
Telling you to
unrelated.
go to sleep. Time to get up, move around. Apologies. So this is the part that is the most intact. So in terms of recognizing and celebrating the heritage, this is really why I was able to get on board with that. And it is also, so T. Arcs, even though he died so young, he actually designed a lot of buildings both in Victoria and in Oak Bay. And this really is a signature of his style in terms of the hipped roof, the veranda. So being able to allow the community to really see it and celebrate it and enjoy it once more, because you really can't see it anymore from Prospect Place. That was sort of why I was able to kind of support it in the way that I have. And what was the other one that you did ask? Foundation. Oh, the interior elements. So obviously with the changes, sorry, there's a lot going on. With the changes that are happening on the interior, obviously designation was no longer a viable option, but I am excited to say that, so when you walk up to the building, you'll have the veranda, you walk into the front hall. If you look on my conservation plan, this photograph, a lot of this will still be as it is seen here and as it is described in the 1897 newspaper article. So that to me was quite exciting to be able to still have that wood paneling. You have the Tudor arches, all of the Tudor arches that were spotlit in 1897. I love the phrasing of this, as we talked about earlier, talking about 4 Tudor arches make a pleasing feature. This is how it was described in 1897. All of those will be maintained on the inside. So we have the Tudor arches, we have the paneling, we have the fireplaces. There are the elements that we're trying our best to be able to preserve them where they are. Oh, thank you. Yes, this. So just even if the designation, I would say interior designation is quite a rare thing because it's private space, where typically the designation is for the exterior. So an interior space not being designated to me is not a deal breaker because you still have the designation on the outside. You're getting to see this beautifully revitalized facade on the outside. So this is kind of where I fell on that. Does that answer your questions? My apologies.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
I don't see other hands from council for other questions, so I've lost my order here. So I'm just going to say speakers are invited to speak a second time if they are providing new or additional information. It's the same process as we had before. Anybody else from the audience wish to speak to council at this time? This is the second call for public input. And then moving on to 2.6C, this is the third and final time and call for written submission. So I'm going to just read this out to make sure we're compliant. Please be reminded that this public hearing is the final opportunity to provide council with comments prior to the potential consideration of these proposed bylaws. If there are any additional written submissions to be included in the public record of the hearing, you must provide that submission to the corporate officer now, prior to the close of the public hearing. So this is the third and final call for public input. Please come forward. That sounded ominous, but it is not. Just an opportunity to make sure that everybody has a chance to have their final say. Welcome back, Mr. Grant.
It's always challenging, Ken Grant, I'm in the HCA. It's always challenging to sit here and figure out how to answer some of the things that, your questions you're asking. I guess what we were after is that in not rotating the building, moving it forward, the parking would still be in the exact same place, not on the south side, but exactly where it is. And it'd still be under the building, the land slopes down there. It should be an easy fix. So I guess we're asking the applicant to think a little bit more about, it's not just building a straight driveway straight through the stone wall, straight down the whole side of Annandale, and then the lot 2 have a double driveway straight through to the house. I think we were thinking that if you could go through the existing gates and meander or, find a way around the trees, around, when I look at it, I see possibilities. And as a neighborhood, we see those possibilities. We're thinking, just save those oaks, save that stone wall. And, it would help the people who live next to Annandale not to have a driveway right down the side of the house, their house, which is next door to Annandale. I mean, we were trying to look at options that would help everybody. And we're hoping that there's just a little bit more flexibility than just the sort of, this is that. And even the heritage comments. My wife and I, as you know, some of you, we've designated 3 homes and we're involved in designating another home. We actually did an interior designation on our last home. And so we are fairly heritage oriented, yes, but still there's always a way to preserve the heritage. That south view, that's what everyone's seeing. Okay, we haven't seen the east side, but then we're used to seeing the south side. That's what we're used to seeing, and that's what needs to be preserved. And there must be a way to do it. I just find it impossible not to see that there's a way around this. And that's what we're after. And so, thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Mr. Prince, you look like you were going to come and speak. Did you wish to speak? No. Okay. So this is the third and final time. Any other speakers wishing to address council before I conclude this? I don't see any. Make sure the people in this room beside have had a chance. Everybody's heard. This is the third and final call. We don't usually have quite such a full room, so I want to make sure everybody's heard. All right, thank you. The public hearing is now closed. Now the public hearing is closed, just for clarity, no further submissions or comments from the public or interested persons can be accepted by members of council. Thank you to the participants, both in person and online, for your respectful submissions and comments here tonight. And really, you've helped create a very welcoming and environment for very diverse options to be heard. So thank you for that. Please be advised that should council need clarification or staff opinion on issues raised at this public hearing or the information associated with the public hearing, council can request such clarification from staff after the close of the public hearing at the following regular council meeting of council when a third reading of the proposed bylaw will be considered. That's it for all of the formal process. I would look for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.